Hello and welcome back to Democracy, everybody. Welcome back to Helldivers 2, where today we're going to be taking a look at the submachine guns, and we're going to be ranking them against all of the factions, as well as I'm going to be showing you the builds that I like to use for them. This, once again, is all my opinion, so feel free to disagree with me on really any of these. The submachine guns are a pretty interesting group of primary weapons, since they are also kind of secondary weapons, since you can use them one-handed. One-handed weapons, like all of your secondary weapons and submachine guns, and a few other weapons like the crossbow, you can fire this behind you as you run. You don't actually have to be aiming with it, which makes so you're not as slow when running away from something, or at least allows you to fight back while you're running away, which is pretty cool. So we have 6 submachine guns to talk about. The very first one is called the MP98 Knight. This is the P90 submachine gun. This one comes with the deluxe edition of the game, so you do need to have that in order to get this one. If you don't have that, then you're just going to have to purchase it. This is like the only gun that you actually have to buy with real money, I would say. All the other weapons in the game you can just earn from getting the war bonds and playing the game normally. This is the one exception to that. And the submachine gun is actually pretty good. For an overall rating for the Knight, I would say this one's A tier across the board because it's generally pretty good against everything, especially once you have attachments to it. If you don't have the attachments, it can be a little bit difficult to control, since this one does have a really high rate of fire. It has a 1300 rate of fire, almost 1400 rate of fire. That is pretty high. This is one-handed, this has light armor pen, does 70 damage a shot, holds 50 rounds by default, although this can have extended mags on it, and it doesn't bounce around too much, but it does have a decent amount of muzzle climb, at least to start out with. Against the bugs, this one is really good for killing all the small bugs very quickly, and it can kill the medium bugs pretty fast as well. You do need to be aiming for weak spots with this, especially towards the bigger bugs, and it's really not the best for that. Something like special weapon would be a whole lot better, but for the crowd control, this one is pretty good. Against bots, this one's actually pretty good too. Once you put some attachments on it, it's very accurate, so it's really easy to hit headshots with this. It's not great at super long range because you can't put a crazy scope on this or anything. It's not going to be as good as like the DMRs generally are, but it's still actually pretty good, and it pairs really well with the ballistic shield if you want to use that. Yeah, if you're fighting medium bots with that, you're going to win like pretty much every single fight, so that's really cool, at least until you run out of bullets. That is kind of another problem with this one. And then against the squids, this one is also pretty good. It can't really do anything towards harvesters, but you can spray down pretty much everything else. This does really well against the voteless hordes. It does actually really well against the flesh mobs too. Against overseers, it's fine as well. Like medium armor pen is a little bit better against them, but for the most part, this one is perfectly fine. For customizations, you have quite a lot with the P90. For optics, I like going with the reflex sight. You could go with whatever sight you like though. The 1.5 times tube you can get really early on, so that's really nice. I personally like the reflex on this though if I'm going to be ADSing with it. For an underbarrel, I would recommend the vertical foregrip. That cuts down on the muzzle climb a lot, and it makes it really easy to hold this on target. That is a really big improvement. You could also go with the flashlight vertical grip if you were okay with sparing a little bit of the ergonomics, but you still wanted the flashlight on there. For the muzzle attachment, I really like the flash hider, but the compensator is also really good. Depends on which you like. And then I do really like the extended mag on this. That takes you from 50 rounds to 70 rounds. You have less magazines overall. You have 5 with this, but that's fine, especially if you want to be running like siege ready armor, then you still get more magazines for it. And there are times where those 70 rounds do make a difference, especially with this thing having like almost 1400 rate of fire. You can run through ammo pretty quickly with it. Overall, I really enjoy the Knight. It's probably one of my favorite submachine guns. Up next, we have the ST11 submachine gun. This one is the Bison submachine gun that came with the Killzone collab. So if you're on Xbox, you don't have this, and if you weren't logged in at the time when the Killzone collab was around, then you also don't have this. I don't think you're missing out on too much, because this is basically just a weaker version of the P90 in my opinion, where this one has a similar rate of fire, not quite as high, but still pretty high rate of fire at 1000. Still does the same damage as the P90 at 70, holds 48 rounds in it, and doesn't have very much recoil. This one also has light armor pen, and this one is also one-handed. This weapon is kind of interesting. For an overall rating, I would say this one's probably like a B tier across the board. It's just not as good as the P90. I find that one just to be better, especially with the customizations, especially since you can have like the bigger magazine, you can have the flash hider, and you can have like the foregrip, as well as you can change out the sights. All of that just kind of makes that weapon a much more tempting option for me than something like the ST11 submachine gun. The Bison itself is not bad though. It still is decent against everything. Against bugs, you can still spray through all the small bugs with no problem. It's okay against the big bugs. On the bot front, it's still kind of the same situation where it's pretty accurate, so it's not too hard to hit bots in the head, especially if you want to be using the ballistic shield in combination with this. You don't really need to be ADSing then, so that's not a big deal. ADSing with this one is a little bit weird just because of the iron sights that it has. They're not bad at all, but there's a lot of flash in front of the gun, so after you fire this a little bit, if you're not sure if you killed whatever you were shooting at, if it wasn't something big, sometimes it can be a little bit distracting because of that. And then against the squids, this one is also fine. It clears through the vote list really quickly. You can clear up flesh mobs with it. You got a decent amount of magazines overall with it. I do like it once again with like siege ready armor. That way I can just reload this faster and it holds more magazines, but it's pretty good with just about any armor. So yeah, this submachine gun is fine. And also, speaking of a fine submachine gun, up next is the Halo submachine gun, the M7S submachine gun. This one I would also say is just B tier across the board. This one comes in with less rate of fire than the Bison, although less recoil as well, so that's kind of cool. Holds the same amount of rounds at 48 and does the same amount of damage. It's also one-handed. It also has light armor pen, but this one is suppressed, and that does somewhat make a difference if you like playing sneaky. That is kind of cool, especially if you want to be taking this with like smokes, you want to run around, you want to spray some things, and then you want to do like the main objectives without anything seeing you. The sights on this are a little bit strange. They're not my favorite. Usually I just fire this from the hip and it's fine. Again, still works really well with the ballistic shield. It's fine towards bugs. You can kill all the small bugs pretty quickly, and even the medium bugs. Not going to do much towards the big ones. Against bots, it's okay because it doesn't bounce around very much. It's pretty easy to hit headshots. And then against squids, it's also just kind of okay, where you can clear through the vote list, you can clear through flesh mobs, and it can take down like overseers. Not too much to say here, and once again, this one as well as the Bison cannot be customized because they are collab weapons. So there's not too much to talk about either of these. I think they're both fine weapons and they both fill a pretty similar role, but I would still rather take the P90. I feel like that is just a better option than both of these, with the exception of maybe if you want to be sneaky with like the Halo submachine gun, but that's just my personal opinion. Up next we have the Reprimand. This is the UMP45 looking submachine gun, and this one is pretty cool. This one is the only non-one-handed submachine gun though, so it functions a whole lot more like an assault rifle, and it should really probably be compared to the assault rifles as opposed to the submachine guns, since you are giving up the ability to actually blind fire this or fire it in conjunction with like the ballistic shield. That being said though, the Reprimand is really cool. This is the only submachine gun that I actually have maxed out, and it was the second weapon I actually ever maxed out. So this one has medium armor pen, so it hits a lot harder than the other submachine guns. It has 125 damage per shot. It has a slow rate of fire though, only coming in at about 500 rate of fire, and it does have a small capacity, only coming in at 25. For an overall rating for the Reprimand, I would say this one's probably, once again, probably B tier versus the bugs, B tier versus the squids, but A tier versus the bots. This one is really good. The main problem with this one is just the magazine situation. Holding 25 rounds is pretty awkward, and if we're comparing this to other assault rifles, some other assault rifles kind of do this thing's job better, especially with like the Coyote, but the Coyote does it better than all of the other assault rifles too. This one versus the bugs is pretty good. You can kill the small and the medium bugs really fast with this. It feels really good to fight them, but holding 25 rounds does make it so it's a little bit awkward there. You're gonna have to be reloading this pretty often. Same thing kind of goes with the squids. You can kill pretty much everything on the squid front fairly efficiently with this. It's not bad, but the small magazine does make it a little bit awkward if you start getting swarmed by the vote list. Against bots though, this one's really good since there's not usually a whole lot of bots that swarm you. If they are, they're berserkers, and this one can rip through berserkers pretty fast, and it can kill the medium bots really fast. That is a really good thing about the Reprimand. It can even hurt things like Hulks. If they're facing away from you, you can just keep shooting them in the back. That does also work. For the customizations for this one, I really like going once again with the Reflex Mark II on here. It doesn't really have any long range sights on here. The longest it has is the 1.5 times scope. If you want the best ergonomics though, you could go with the iron sights. Those are fine as well, but I actually like using the sights on this one, so that's why I usually go with the M2. The vertical foregrip on this does make it feel much better. This one does have quite a bit of muzzle climb when you're firing it, so if you put the vertical foregrip on there, it cuts it down significantly. And then for a muzzle attachment, I really like going with the compensator on this. It also cuts down the muzzle climb significantly. That's like the one main problem that this one has outside of its magazine capacity. If this one could get like quick detach mags or something like that, or a drum mag, or just an extended mag of something, and it could take it up to like, let's say 40 rounds, or with the faster reload speed being, I don't know, 30-40% faster, this gun would actually be really, really good against everything. It already is pretty good against everything. It's just like having to reload this one pretty often and running through those 25 rounds can be a little bit annoying. So that's why I put it a little bit lower than some of the other weapons. Still probably one of my favorite submachine guns though. Then up next we have the Defender submachine gun. This one comes in the free war bond, and this is the only free submachine gun actually. So this one's pretty interesting. It's got a very slow rate of fire for a submachine gun, not quite as slow as the Reprimand, coming in at 520. Does do more damage than some of the other submachine guns that have light armor pen, coming in at 80. This one has always felt kind of weird to me overall as a submachine gun, but I do kind of like it. It's got a slow chugging rate of fire, and it's very easy to keep on target, which makes it so a lot of the customizations feel a little bit redundant on this. Like, it's cool that it gets them, but it doesn't feel like it impacts the Defender all that much. So for an overall rating for the Defender, I would say this one is probably B tier against the bugs and the squids, and A tier against the bots. The slow rate of fire and the decent amount of damage per shot, as well as the very little recoil, makes it pretty good for picking off bots. Against the bugs, this one's still fine. You can spray it out, not really quickly, but at a chugging pace, that clears up the bugs fine. It's not the fastest, but it's okay. Against the bots, once again, the slow chugging rate of fire is actually pretty good for just hitting those headshots. You can pick them off pretty easily, and it works pretty well in conjunction with the ballistic shield. And then against the squids, once again, this one is perfectly fine for killing the voteless, and it's fine for killing the flesh mobs. I don't like it as much for killing the overseers as some of them. Like, I'd much rather have the Reprimand for that, or the P90 for it. But the Defender is fine for this. For customizations, you do have a lot with this one. I personally like going with a 1.5 times tube sight for this one, just so that I can hit bots in the head a little bit easier if I'm going to be ADSing with this, because the rate of fire is pretty low. You could go with a 2 times scope with this too. This thing has amazing ergonomics without any attachments to it, so you don't have to worry about that. You could go with all non-beneficial ergonomic upgrades. I do go with the vertical foregrip for this one, but honestly I don't think it matters. It's really easy to keep the Defender on target, so if you want better ergonomics, go with the angled foregrip. Same thing goes in the muzzle attachment. I like the flash hider on this, but if you want the compensator or the muzzle brake, feel free to go with it. Or if you just want no attachments and to max out the ergonomics, you can also go with that. Maxing out the ergonomics with this is kind of funny. It's not really that different from the basic Defender though, but it is something. And then for the magazine, at first I was really hopeful for like the drum magazine for this, but honestly I don't think it really matters. I've got the short mag on mine right now, but the extended mag that it comes with is fine, and the drum mag is also fine. This doesn't have a really high rate of fire like the P90 does, so having a 75 round capacity drum mag doesn't really matter for this. It's still gonna have that slow chugging like grease gun rate of fire, where it's fine, it's okay, but even with like the small mags, you're probably not going to be running through bullets super quickly, so you can just go with a faster reload speed from those if you really want to. And then our very last submachine gun is the Pummeler. This one is like the Liberator Concussive, where it can stagger stuff, which is kind of okay. I'm not the biggest fan of these weapons. I think they're fine, but they don't really do a whole lot for me. This one also does 70 damage, has the slowest rate of fire coming in at 475, so it even has a slower chugging rate of fire. Very little recoil, very easy to hold on target, and it can kind of have a splash effect, at least if you're hitting close enough to enemies to where you can stagger multiple. So that is pretty cool. Still one-handed like all the other submachine guns aside from the Reprimand. For an overall rating for this weapon, personally, I would say this one's probably like C tier versus the bugs and the squids. I'm not a huge fan of it. It can be okay for hitting like the overseers. It's kind of nice there. And then for the bots, I would say it's like B tier. The slow rate of fire and you still being able to hit headshots is kind of nice, and being able to stagger things like the Devastators is pretty good. The main problem I have with this weapon, at least on the bug and the squid front, is that you can get overrun potentially pretty easy. Yes, the stun is kind of nice for this. I find this one to be a little bit better against the medium enemies, the overseers and the medium bugs, where you can kind of stun them, especially if you have teammates that can kind of beat up on them and clear them up a little bit better. For the customization for the Pummeler, this one again is very similar to Defender, where it already has really high ergonomics, so if you want to go with even more ergonomics you can, or if you just want to have like the least amount, go for it. For the sights, I do like the Reflex Mark II once again, but it's really your choice. Pick whichever sight you like the best. For an underbarrel, we don't have as many attachments. I usually just stick with the laser sight and the flashlight. I find that to be pretty good, especially if we end up going into the caves. It's kind of useful there, and we're not really giving up any ergonomics, and we're not really saving that much ergonomics if we go with the no underbarrel. For the muzzle, again, it's your choice. I went with the flash hider on mine. I think that one's fine. It's okay. It's really easy to keep this thing on target even if it doesn't have an attachment, but I do kind of like that one the best. And then once again for the magazine, it's really your choice. Like the extended mag is fine. The short mags I have put on mine just so that I can have the faster reload speed with them, but that's really about it. I'm not really that interested in going with the drum mag because I don't have a really high rate of fire with this weapon. I'm pretty much always going to be able to reload it if I need to. And that'll do it for the submachine guns. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at the assault rifles. That's the only weapons we haven't talked about yet, which we do have quite a lot of them. But overall, the submachine guns in Helldivers 2 are pretty decent. I do like some of them, especially like the P90 and the Reprimand. Those ones I really do enjoy. I hope we get more in the future because it'd be really cool to have more customizable submachine guns than the ones that we do have. Tell me your thoughts on the submachine guns though. How do you enjoy them? Thank you guys so very much for watching this. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye, everybody!